Good day. Today I would like to show you how to connect the AXPERT MKS2 or even the Infinisolar V2 inverter to one of these LiO2 version batteries. Now keep in mind, these inverters is not equipped with a BMS monitoring device. Because of that, you do need to purchase one of these external BMS boxes to communicate with the battery. So for the accessories, as mentioned already, you do need the BMS box to establish BMS communication between the inverter and the battery. This comms cable you would have received with the inverter. Note you have serial on the one side with the RJ45 on the other end. Do not buy a cable like this over the internet if you might have lost it. You do need the specific cable that was supplied with the inverter, as the pinouts on this RJ45 is different. Then you will need a standard networking cable, pin to pin, as well as a DC 12 volt power supply at approximately 1 to 1.5 amps. Unfortunately, you do not get this power supply with the BMS box. You do need to purchase this separately. So looking at the BMS box, you will find that there is a card slotted on the side of the BMS box. You do need to unscrew it so you can remove the card from the box, basically so you can get to the dip switches on the card to set it accordingly. Generally you would can use the default settings on this card. However, just for argument's sake, let's run through it. The switch on the top is switch number 2 and switch at the bottom is switch number 1. Switch number 1, all dip switches is in the off position. Not a single one is on. Then turning to switch number 2, dip number 1 off, dip number 2 and 3 is on, dip number 4 is off, and then dip number 5, 6, 7 and 8 is on. Once that is done, you can fit the card back in place, make sure it's properly connected, and perhaps just screw it in place as well to make sure of a proper contact. So let's start with connecting everything. I'd like to start with the communication cable that you received with the inverter. Your RS485 networking plug you will fit to the inverter's connector marked as RS232. Something I'd like to recommend or mention is, once you use either one of these ports, USB or the RS232, you cannot use the second port. Only one of these ports is capable of operation during connection. You cannot use both. So in this case, not to interfere with the communication of the BMS box, do not connect anything to USB. Then for the other end of the cable, the serial 232, you will move to your side of the BMS box and fit it in there, and just screw it in place to make sure of a proper contact. Next item is the networking cable. So as mentioned already, this is a normal networking cable, pin to pin. You do not need to change the plugs. However, if you do not have a cable available and you would like to make up your own cable, pin number 4 and pin number 5 is the two critical RS485 connection you need to use. So pin number 4 will go to pin number 4 and pin number 5 will go to pin number 5. It's a straight cable, it's not a crossover cable. So the one end of the cable you will fit to the top port of the battery, and then the other port you can bring to the BMS box. Either one of these ports you can use. It does not matter which one you use, both of them, either one of the two will work. So next is the 12 volt DC power supply. Now do keep in mind, if the power from this power supply is lost to the BMS box, then obviously you will lose BMS communication because the BMS box has no power. So do keep in mind, when you plug this in, you need to connect this to the output power coming from the inverter. So as long as the inverter is operational and providing output power, output AC power to this power supply, then obviously you will have power leading towards the BMS box, which in the end will make sure there is communication between the inverter and the battery. Connecting the power supply to power, and then leading the power supply to the BMS box next to the RJ45 connector. So basically we are hooked up. The inverter is connected with the grey cable towards the BMS box. You have a normal networking cable from the BMS box to the top port of the battery, and then, as mentioned, your 12 volt power supply coming from the inverter's output power. Okay, so on the side of the battery you will notice you have these two black ports on the side of the battery. This is for your parallel connection from battery to battery. So as soon as you use multiple batteries, more than one, you will daisy chain the batteries with the supplied cable that you received with the battery, from battery to battery to battery to battery. Something I can recommend: dip number 0 on this dial is set for your master. Master is always set to 0. Your second battery will be set to number 1. The battery leading up to that will be number 2, and the next 3 and up to 9 is the maximum amount of batteries you can connect. The last thing I can recommend is this termination connector. Do take note, while this is not connected, you will have a battery that's in protect. Alarm is on. So coming around to the battery, you will find these two ports, which has to do with your parallel communication. You can connect this to either one of the two ports. Once that is connected, you will come to find that the alarm light has been shut down. So I've deliberately disconnected this cable now while everything is on, so that I can show you how it communicates. Now, apologies, you might not see this very clearly. Note that the battery capacity bars is currently on the inverter on 2 bars charged, 2 bars SOC. But if you come to the battery, you will notice it's still on 1 bar SOC. The SOC levels do not match up, and that's because there's no communication currently. You will also notice next to the battery capacity bars and the battery light, you should have an icon stating LI, which is your telltale sign that BMS communication has been established. So let's connect this. There we go. It actually now displays 0.4, that the battery is flat, and you can actually see that it is now on a different SOC level, which is drained. Battery is flat. That's because it is now actually detecting the perfect SOC level from the battery. Currently, there is communication established on this inverter to the battery. It is ready to go. Thank you very much.